the counsel to the petitioner, and he also confirmed to me that the police got it.
In the year 1999, as Nigeria took its first steps out of the shadows of military rule, the nation looked for answers. For truth, for justice, for healing. And so, the Human Rights Violations Investigation Commission was born, popularly known as the Oputa Panel. For 3 years, the nation watched as stories of pain, courage, and survival unfolded. Soldiers, politicians, activists, victims, and perpetrators all sat before the panel, their testimonies shaping how we remember some of the darkest chapters in Nigeria's history. But now, 26 years later, the question remains: what happened to the key players of that historic moment? Where are the voices that once dominated our airwaves with tales of power, betrayal, and resilience? In this mini-series, Oputa Panel, 26 years later, we revisit the faces, the testimonies, and the legacies. We'll trace their journeys, some who rose, some who fell, some who quietly disappeared. This isn't just about the past. It's about how history echoes into the present and what it means for Nigeria today. So join us as we uncover the lives behind the headlines and ask, where are they now?
Standing in court and speaking to the court on behalf of, so it was just God doing his own thing. All right.
With profound respect, my lord, I am YC Maikyau. I appear for General I. Arbame, PS, sir, plus.
Tonight, we revisit one of the most distinguished voices at the Human Rights Violations and Investigations Commission, the Oputa Panel. Among the prominent figures who made their mark was Yakubu Chonoko Maikyau, a brilliant legal mind whose clarity and conviction captured national attention.
It will not be correct for any man of God to use his tongue with which he praises God and to also insult. Am I correct?
Absolutely, my lord, you're right.
Since then, Maikyau has carved an extraordinary path in Nigeria's legal landscape.
Thank you.
From establishing YC Maikyau and Company to earning the coveted rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, from becoming a Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators in London to leading the Nigerian Bar Association as its president, his career has been defined by excellence, diplomacy, and transformative leadership. Known for his collaborative style, Maikyau redefined the role of the NBA, building bridges where others saw walls, and proving that true influence comes not from confrontation, but from constructive engagement. A lawyer, an arbitrator, a leader, and a man of faith, Yakubu Chonoko Maikyau remains one of the enduring legacies of the Oputa Panel era. We had the rare privilege of sitting down with him to talk about his humble beginnings, his unexpected journey into the legal profession, and the role of faith in shaping his path. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more inspiring content.
My lord, I'm still very much below 40.
I'm the seventh of my sibling, the last child of my parents. The fifth was a male, an elder brother. I never met him, but so the first four died at infancy. He had grown to be in primary school. He had actually gone as far as primary 6 before he also passed. So it was only my immediate elder sister, who was the sixth, that I got to know. We grew up together, and she passed in 2005. So growing up in a family of my parents who never went to school, were not educated, and first and foremost, I went to secondary school, and when I did, I was a pure science student. And eventually, when I finished secondary school, I was admitted in the School of Basic Studies in Zaria. And why I talk about the grace of God, which I only could relate with much later in my life, in hindsight, because of how much I knew then, is that when I finished, well, I didn't have to do anything to go to primary school. I was just put in primary school because I was privileged. My parents, my father was in the army, and that was how my family came in contact. My late sister and I were exposed to Western education. So we were sent to primary school. And after secondary school, I thought that I had studied enough and I needed to catch some rest. So, and I wasn't planning to further my education, and my parents were not, they were ready to just agree with me, whatever I decided to do. They were ready to flow with that. So, but leaving secondary school from Sokoto State at the time, we got admitted into the School of Basic Studies. So what happened then was that the State Ministry of Education selected us from the science secondary schools across the state and secured admissions for us at the School of Basic Studies. So I left secondary school in '84, and we got that admission in the School of Basic Studies. And that was the time when I thought, having so studied in secondary school and writing my WAEC, it was time for me to take a break before I would further my education. And so we got admitted, meaning that I didn't have to do anything to go to the School of Basic Studies. I didn't apply. So I went to School of Basic Studies, and I chose the combination of physics, chemistry, biology. And that was because what I wanted to study at the time was medicine. And that was a combination that could prepare you to study medicine. So we went to Zaria. We started our studies at the School of Basic Studies in Zaria, finished in '85. I wanted to study medicine. I got a point short of the cutoff point for those of us who applied for medicine in ABU Zaria from Sokoto State. So I didn't get admitted into the Faculty of Medicine in Zaria, but my second choice was veterinary medicine. So I was admitted. I went on to register for veterinary medicine. I had an option of coming back to Sokoto, the University of Sokoto at the time, to study medicine. But, at the point I had spent a year already in the School of Basic Studies in Zaria, and at that time, very young, coming out of secondary school, that was my first major exposure. Went to Zaria, had interacted with other students from all over the country, and was beginning to make friends. And I didn't want to come back to Sokoto. And you know how you would have introduced yourself severally to your friends, your colleagues back home, and you were carrying the identity card of the School of Basic Studies in Zaria. And I didn't want to go through that exercise of explaining why I had to leave Zaria to go back to Sokoto. So I decided to take up the admission in veterinary medicine. 2 weeks into my lectures as a veterinary medicine student, and I recall at the time that Professor Daniel Saro was the dean of the Faculty of Medicine, Veterinary Medicine in Zaria. 2 weeks into my studies in veterinary medicine, a friend of mine who eventually studied building engineering, Hassan Anjunma, we actually came to the School of Basic Studies together. Met me. I was working, if you're familiar with the main campus, Samaro campus of ABU Zaria, I was working from Suleiman Hall through the chapel by Amina Hall, the guest hostel. I was going to the basketball court. going to the basketball court around the old assembly hall. He met me around the chapel and said, but what happened to you? I haven't even seen you. So I said, yes, I've been around. He said, no, that I was not being truthful with him. I must have changed my campus. I said, how could you be talking about me changing my campus? He said, no, because he realized, he saw that I have applied to study law. And I must have been away from that campus, and that was why he wasn't seeing me on campus. I said, no, I don't even know what you were talking about. He insisted, because the Faculty of Law is not on Samaru campus, but at Kogo campus. So he insisted that I wasn't being truthful with him. I didn't want to tell him that I've decided to go read law. So he said he had to show me where my name appeared in the list of admissions for Faculty of Law. So, and it was getting dark. We had to get a torchlight, a flashlight, to go to the old Senate building, the bungalows at the back of the current Senate building on the main campus, where the admission lists were pasted on the notice board. And because he had marked that particular board, he took me straight to the board and pointed my name under Faculty of Law. But I said, well, I'm seeing this for the first time and I don't know how that happened. I showed him also, because I had gone to that same notice board to check for my admission, even though I had received an admission letter from JAM. But then you needed to be sure that the university had also admitted you. So we did that same, went through that same motion, went there, I checked, saw my name on the veterinary medicine, which was what I'd applied. And don't forget, at this time, I'd already registered. I was a student of veterinary medicine. So I just needed to do that to confirm to him that, this is where I am. So he looked at it, and as if that was all he was meant to do, when we left the place, I never met Hassan again. He went on with his own business, and then that agitated my mind. And for some reason, I decided to just follow that admission through. Let me see if this was actually true, that someone who studied physics, chemistry, biology, and who never applied to study law would be admitted to read law. So the following day, that was a Sunday, the following day, Monday morning, I didn't go to class, didn't go to the faculty. I simply went to the Senate building, went to, I think it was on the 3rd floor, the academic secretary's office. I went to check if my name was on the master list of the admissions for law. Lo and behold, when I approached the gentleman that was sitting with this very large computer printouts, you probably need 2 people to turn over the pages to look at the list. He turned it over. When I gave him my names, he looked at my surname, asked of my surname, I gave it to him, and he checked, he confirmed that yes, my name was on the master list for veterinary medicine. That was all I needed, and he now instructed me to do what I had already done for veterinary medicine, that I should go to the old assembly hall downstairs by the basketball court and collect my admission letter. So it was just a piece of paper typewritten with your name and particulars of the faculty and the course of study. So I did that, joined the queue like I did to collect my admission for veterinary medicine. I collected my admission letter. The next thing I did, which was the following day again, because I was also surprised myself, I decided to go. I had some friends in the faculty of law. I knew some of my friends who were in that that campus. Some of them were in law, others were in accounting. So I went to Congo campus the following day and went to the Faculty of Law. I walked into the office of the secretary to the Dean of Law, introduced myself, and I told him why I was there. I came to check to confirm if my name appeared in the faculty list for admissions for that year. That was 1985. So he checked through the list and my name was there. What else was I to do? I didn't know, because I had come to the last bus stop as far as confirmation of my admission was concerned. Went to the academic secretary's office, the faculty, my name was there. So I came back to tell, I had walked out of the office, I went back again. That was a moment of truth. I had to tell the secretary to the dean that, I didn't apply to study law, but this was what happened. I told him everything about my name appearing and how I checked and got to his office. So he said, well, if you want to study law, we do not have your document here. Your JAM form is not in the faculty. So what I would advise you to do is to go back to the Faculty of Medicine where you've been admitted, apply to withdraw your admission, and you can transfer all your documentations to the Faculty of Law. And that was eventually what happened. And I must be grateful to God for positioning people who helped in that course. The Dean of Law at the time was Professor Musa Yakubu. And the Dean, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, like I said earlier, was Professor Daniel Saro, who eventually became Vice Chancellor in ABU's area, but he was the dean at the time. So I went to meet him. I walked, imagine how someone coming from my background, the village, and all of that, the timidity that came with us to that environment, that university environment. But somehow I mustered the courage to go meet the dean and to tell him that this was what happened and I didn't want to continue to be your student. Literally, that was what it meant. I mean, I was going to tell my own dean that I was rejecting his course of study to go back to another faculty. And he sat me down in his office, spoke to me, and encouraged me. You know, so the Dean of Veterinary Medicine is here sitting with his own student who had studied physics, chemistry, biology in the School of Basic Studies, who was not admitted to study law, but just suddenly found that he's been admitted to read law and has come to meet him to ask him to release him to go study law. And he was encouraging me. In hindsight, if it wasn't God that had put someone there who had that experience, because what he said to me was that, oh, okay, if that is what you want to do, I also have colleagues with whom we studied sciences, but as we speak right now, they are in the legal profession. So he mentioned a particular name at that time that I didn't remember until much later when I sat with him to reintroduce myself, and you know, he came up with all those names. But I remembered he said all that to me. And so he said if I applied to withdraw my application, my admission in the faculty, he was ready to grant me, he was ready to release me. And again, that something very profound he did was that I would also defer your admission. I wouldn't just release you, I would defer your admission to the following year. Just in case you do not cope or you are not able to cope with law, you can come back and continue with your veterinary medicine. That was awesome. So he did that. I withdrew my admission. And you know, things were really good at the time. I was able to recover my tuition fee, all the fees that I paid in the faculty, my accommodation fee, and all of that. They were all refunded to me. And I went over to Congo campus, Faculty of Law, where I registered for law. Because now, having withdrawn my admission, my JAM form was given to me, and I took it to the Faculty of Law, where I did my registration and studied and continued my studies as law. Of course, law was completely strange. I never even studied government, did nothing, no economics, no commerce, nothing. I mean, I was a pure science student. So you imagine how I would leave veterinary medicine with all the things that I learned in physics, chemistry, and biology, now coming to sit in a class where things were completely strange to me. But I sat there, and that was a point in my life when I was dealing with certain habits. I drank a lot of alcohol. I also smoked cigar. And so my first year in the university, out of truancy, I repeated that year. I repeated the year because we had 6 subjects that you took in the first year. If you failed 2 out of 6, you were allowed to resit those 2 subjects. If you failed up to 3 of the courses, you had to repeat the year. So that was what happened to me. I had to repeat the year, and all of that was because I wasn't a serious student. Actually, I have had cause to say that if you are looking for a kind of student that you shouldn't be, when I was in the university and you met me, you wouldn't look any further. That was the situation. So I repeated a year. But by the time I repeated, I never had to resit any subject. I was able to graduate in 1989 instead of 88 if I didn't have to repeat. So I graduated in 89, went to the law school, and was called to the bar in 1990. So fast forward, and something that I missed, which was very, very important, talking about my dean saying I should, I could go, and when if I'm not able to cope, I come back the following year to continue. The only brother figure I had at the time was my brother-in-law, who was married to my cousin. And I'm sure Solomon is your friend. So just to make you understand who I'm talking about, Solomon's father, Mr. Joshua Magaji, was married to he's deceased now, was married to my cousin. And the only person I could think of to guide me on that decision that I had to take at the point, other than my engagement with the Dean of Law, Dean of Veterinary Medicine, was him. So I had to travel to Sokoto. At the time because he was in Sokoto, was working in Sokoto, and I went to tell him that this is what I found, and I needed advice on what to do. And these were his words. I will never forget these words. He said, well, as far as it's concerned, law is a more lucrative course than veterinary medicine. If I can cope, I should go ahead to study law. And that was actually the conclusion of the matter as far as the decision, the decision to move to go and study law was concerned. If my brother-in-law said that to me, the esteem to which I held him and how I saw him, how he was that big brother, figure to me, I mean, there was no one else I should consult on that particular issue. Of course, don't forget that I wouldn't go talk to my parents because what did they even know about that? So I just went back to Zaria, and that was when I moved to the Faculty of Law to do my registration and all of that. So I finished, I was called to the bar in 1990. Fast forward, in my class of 1989, with whom I graduated from ABU Zaria, and my class, my colleagues with whom we started in 1985, that was the year before I repeated, who graduated in 1988 and were called in 1999. Of these two classes, by the special grace of God, I happened to be the first senior advocate of Nigeria from these two classes. And actually, when I first went to court, one of my colleagues saw me in court and was asking me what I came to do. And he wasn't wrong, because I was not such a student that could be associated with something as serious as litigation practice. You go to court and all of that. But you see, so to the glory of God, that happened. And then come 2022, I was elected as president of the Nigerian Bar Association. So if you look at this trajectory, there is no way that any or all of this would have just been a coincidence. No. It must have been God doing his own thing. I had my own plans, even though I was not deliberate about any of the things that I did. But God was just doing his own thing and preparing me, to get into this profession for an experience like this. And that is why I would always, looking at my family background, looking at all of this, my educational pursuit, how that I didn't make any choice on my own, how the admissions and all of that. So the very first application that I will make myself was to go to law school, because at that time when you graduated, you needed to also just complete a form to indicate your desire to go to the Nigerian law school. And it's been so. So this is why I never fail to mention, appreciate, and recognize the grace of God in my life, and to say that if you are looking for the personification of that expression of the grace of God, and you come to find me, I am one very good example of what the grace of God can do. So, anytime you hear me talk about the grace of God, this is just, a part of what the grace of God has done with my life.
I have had to say to Oga Dasa, I thank you so much. And it was your travail that brought me to fame. So I owe who I am today to God Almighty, and a great deal of it to your travail, even though it sounds very selfish. We went through prison, we went through that difficult experience, but on the back of that experience was this young man who had the opportunity to be seen at Oputa Panel. And so let me say this to you. I became president of the bar by the special grace of God, but most of the lawyers who voted for me were not even lawyers at the time of Oputa Panel. So they didn't witness it live. But because they watched courtesy of IT and YouTube, they saw it. They said, oh, this is the man we should vote for. And that is also tied to that experience. That is also linked to the travail that you went through. And that is why I said this is also yet another opportunity for me to do honor. And so I want to appreciate you and appreciate God Almighty for all that He has done in your life.